retired in 1921, and then
2021.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
sure
didn't
that was
want to go
2021.
2021, sorry. I need to pay attention to what I'm saying. I still had grant money when I retired, so I didn't retire because I didn't have stuff to do. I retired because it was harder for me to be a force for good where I was. And also time to turn my civil service slot over to a young person, which I feel strongly about.
Me too. Me too.
So it was good for everyone. But after spending time in Colorado, it sort of reinforced that this was a good place for me to be.
I'm wearing my YMCA of the Rockies shirt in honor of you.
Oh, good.
Because
Yeah.
I recently was hanging out with Melody at the YMCA of the Rockies, walking
In
around.
Estes Park.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But Melody,
yeah.
I don't know that people know, and I kind of want to briefly introduce this at a meta level about you, that you're an atmospheric scientist, correct?
Yeah, my training's in physics, technically chemical physics, which is the interaction between chemistry and physics. So my formal training theoretically was in spectroscopy. So what wavelengths of light are different molecules gonna emit, and then how do we detect them? And my PhD was experimental, so I've always made measurements. And they've always been applied to atmospheric science. So it's kind of like applied physics that I do or have been doing. And this time in my career, I actually, when I got out to Colorado in 2023, my colleagues asked if I wanted to help write a proposal. We got funded. And so I got a part-time job, and now I'm working at NOAA in Boulder hired through the University of Colorado has a cooperative program called Series. So,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Kind of hopefully based on your expertise, but when you talked about chemical physics or whatever you called it, your specialty, that the question that popped into my mind, and I wrote it down, are the origins of the universe best understood as a chemical reaction, or in terms of physics, whatever that could possibly mean?
So I am big on the boundaries between things and how artificial they are. And so, first of all, I should say at the beginning of me talking about technical things or having opinions, either one is that I represent myself. And I've been trained to say that after working for the government for a long time. So my PhD and my experience belongs to me, but I don't represent either NASA or NOAA or anybody else besides me. So I'm going to say always both, and I'm going to say both a lot. So that's what attracted me actually to the chemical physics program at the University of Maryland, which is where I got my PhD, is I think the exciting things happen in the boundaries between different disciplines. And that makes me kind of a jack of all trades, hopefully master of some of them, because I like where different disciplines come together. And I think that's where the action and the excitement is. So I studied origin of the universe in a geochemistry class, but you don't get chemistry without physics, and you don't get physics without chemistry. So, and I'm going to say, the answer to many problems that face us in the world today also need to be addressed on the margins of things.
And in the relationship between things.
Good answer, by the way. Good answer.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm kind of an alternative person in the sense that I don't ordinarily take sides too strongly. I like to try and check out what both sides of some question or saying and try and synthesize them. And I tend to come up with something over there. And some people don't like it because I'm really intuitive and it just sort of pops out. And other people do. So it's just not conventional, I guess.
Well, we call that pandaing.
That might be why I'm here, right?
Yeah, that is why you're here.
So I wanted to ask you guys a question. So it's really hot here and there are fires, which is kind of sad. And it's hot in a lot of places right now. And I've been thinking about geoengineering because I'm kind of surrounded by people who are thinking about it right now. And the New York Times just did an article with David Keith, who was at Harvard, who's a very strong advocate of we need geoengineering and we need it now.
Is he doing the calcium carbonate thing?
They're looking at calcium carbonate, diamonds, and sulfuric acid, injecting them in the stratosphere. And they were going to do this when he was at Harvard. I think it was 2018, and they got shut down by the Sami Council of Indigenous People in northern Sweden, where they were planning to do this. And since then, David Keith has left Harvard and he's moved to University of Chicago and gotten a chunk of money to hire people and explore this further. And so I was disturbed by two things. I was disturbed by this article and what he was saying in the article and who's backing his research. And I was also disturbed by a Panda episode with Mark Stout, who's an intelligence historian.
Right.
And I want to put two ideas together, which Mark Stout kind of did, which the two ideas are that if we can't solve war, we can't solve climate change by geoengineering.
Oh shit. Excuse me.
So,
this is good.
As the non-scientist here, could you explain? I mean, I kind of have an idea of what you mean by geoengineering, but I need to be sure that I understand it correctly. So, what does geoengineering refer to or mean?
Okay, there are several different types of geoengineering, but the idea is that global warming has become, specifically global warming. There's a lot of earth changes that are going on right now, but
right. And have always been going on, presumably.
Absolutely, change is the norm, and it's only people and animals too want homeostasis. They want things to stay the same, but change is more the norm. But the idea is that people, by burning hydrocarbons, are putting a lot of gases in the atmosphere that absorb energy and cause the surface temperature of the earth to warm. And this is really simple, well-established physics and chemistry. And it's not the forcing due to greenhouse gases absorbing energy from sunlight and being re-radiated from the earth. It's not questionable.
So can we say that the Industrial Revolution was essentially accidental geoengineering?
Oh, absolutely. And we're still doing it.
Of course.
So, yeah. So the fires that are occurring recently, many of them have been so big that they get through the lower atmosphere where we have weather up into the stratosphere. So they're getting hotter and bigger and changing perhaps the stratosphere itself. So I look at climate always as an and thing. I'm a both person and I'm an and person. So you have natural changes in the climate. Right now we're at the peak of the solar cycle, which wasn't predicted to be as strong as it is, but it is. There are natural things, volcanic eruptions. Sahunga Tonga eruption put a lot of water vapor into the stratosphere, which is
And cooled things off.
so they are still looking at the impact of the water vapor on ozone, for example. The cool things off that David Keith likes to reference was a different volcanic eruption called Pinatubo.
Okay.
And Pinatubo put a lot of ash in the stratosphere. And
So water vapor and ash might be different.
yeah, exactly. But so I'm going to talk about geoengineering in the stratosphere, where the idea is to do synthetically what Pinatubo did naturally, which is put particles there to reflect incoming solar radiation. And it's an attractive idea because the global warming is now manifesting itself in ways that people can sense and feel, and people are dying of extreme heat in places. And
So I'm here in Maine right now.
oh, Maine!
Our hosts told us that the estimate here in Maine is that Maine has lost a month of winter because of climate change, that 4 weeks of winter, probably at either end of a meteorological winter, no longer occur.
So
Yeah,
that's
that
scary.
makes sense.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Because of phrenology, because biological systems don't necessarily align with the temperature changes. They are able to change only more slowly than the changes that we're seeing in the atmosphere. So it's tempting to say, oh, we got to do something. And getting people to use less energy hasn't been a tractable solution so far. Although, to my mind, regenerative agriculture, for example, would be the kind of solution that would be a win-win, and that could significantly impact global warming in a positive way. But geoengineering is appealing because the idea is if we put this diamond dust or calcium carbonate or sulfate into the stratosphere, we can get, boom, an immediate reduction in temperature.
Would it work for space junk too? I mean, if we have enough space junk floating around.
I love that you brought that up because the head of the lab or the group where I'm working right now at NOAA is looking at the metals that are falling down into the stratosphere. Excuse me. I need to
So,
take a sip of my
oh,
coffee.
good. Get some water. So right. I mean, so anything that's up there, sort of, obviously it would be better if it was a particle that wasn't toxic or couldn't fall on people. Like a really big particle, like a satellite. You can
So
imagine it that way.
here's the thing is we're inadvertently geoengineering a lot of things right now. And there is so much space junk falling down that nobody completely understands the impact that it'll have. Now, in the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, we have weather. But most weather is capped at the tropopause, and the part of the atmosphere above that is stratified, so we don't have overturning in it because it has an ozone layer that absorbs energy from the sun and basically heats it up. So the profile there thermally is stable. And there was a lot of effort and activity to understand how fluorocarbons were impacting the ozone layer because of concern about genetic mutations and cancer from too much shortwave solar radiation reaching the surface of the earth. So
can you state again your thesis? Because we have a little bit more detail now about geoengineering, but your thesis is really compelling and beautiful. And I think it relates not only to geoengineering, but a bunch of technologies that are coming that basically affect the whole world, including space junk, satellites, the whole whatever's going on in
Oh,
space.
yeah,
Yeah. So could you say your thesis again? Because
sure. And so my thesis is that if we cannot solve war, we cannot successfully implement geoengineering.
yeah, that's
Because
so
what
interesting.
I see is that they are stuck in the same place, in that you have to be able to allocate resources on a global scale in a fair way. And geoengineering itself could have unintended consequences for some people while benefiting other people. And we don't know how to make that kind of decision now as a global community, just as we clearly haven't been able to end war because of fighting over resources.
So here you've touched upon a couple of things that have always intrigued me. So one, let's say starting 15 years ago, when the discussion about climate change became more intense globally. So I thought, yep, it's obvious to me how the reality of climate change cannot be denied. But my concern always was, I'm just not persuaded that these interventions that we think we need to make, that we know enough to know which interventions to make, and we never know enough, we're never smart enough to anticipate all the consequences that occur. So, I mean, clearly one intervention of being able to replace our current energy needs with non-fossil fuel energy, that seems to be straightforward, but even that might not be. I concede that point. So therefore, on the issue of climate change, I was always, yes, I accept the reality of it all, but I'm not gung-ho about human ability to design solutions for it, because I understand that on basically any issue, human knowledge at any point appears to be just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. And when you're working with such a complicated set of systems that are interconnected, it's kind of new agey to say, oh, it's all interconnected. But as a scientist, I mean, the more I get into the details of things, the more interconnected all the systems that we have are. So unintended consequences is a big reason for not undertaking a big intervention that is going to impact the atmosphere and biological systems potentially on a global scale in different ways in different places. And I think you're right. I think that geoengineering has motivated a lot of really good scientific achievement, trying to understand more, but I also don't see that it's accomplished yet. The other thing to think about, let me see, I'm going to use the right words here. It's termination shock is what they call it. So once you start perturbing the natural system by, let's say, mostly what I've been talking about is putting something in the stratosphere to reflect light, you have to keep doing it. You can't just stop. So you have to have some stable enough form of governance to globally to continue doing this, to agree to continue doing this.
Very good point.
For the foreseeable future. And if you stop, you're going to shock the system again. So while we were just talking at the beginning of this discussion about change is normal, it is. It's an and thing. There are natural changes, and now there are anthropogenic changes. It's an and thing, and you can't necessarily control the natural part of it.
So it becomes a new form of warfare. Who's going to turn off the cloud seeding thing or whatever it's called,
To me,
right?
it's the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no,
a global allocation of resources. How do we do this? And I believe in human evolution, and I'm an optimist. And so I believe there are solutions, but I also realize that it's a little bit naive to think that we're going to get there quickly.
Or even through our own efforts.
Yeah, but I think you got to try. That's my
Yeah.
opinion on things. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm rehabbing this little old rancher instead of building a house in the middle of the, Front Range prairie that's brand new and whatever, is because I think we need to reuse, recycle, and grow our food in a more responsible way.
I agree with all those things.
Yeah.
But
So
that's,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I stopped myself because I'm not sure I know how to express the feeling that I have, but it is considered a sign of manliness and leadership to make bold decisions with incomplete data.
Yes.
That's
We have to do something. We have to do something
yes,
now.
we got to do something. We got to do something.
Yeah.
And I think we have to, we have to have a different temperament of leadership, I think, to solve the problems. And not just say solve problems, but also take advantage of the opportunities
Yes. So
that lie before us. And,
yes.
I'll stop right there.
Well, so let's define that. I mean, so can we define what that leadership needs to be like, since we're all optimists and we all believe that humans can change? And I mean, so the first thing that comes to mind is leadership that does that can be in a state of awe and humility in relationship to the natural world. That would be different.
So I have a kind of strong intuition. I'm just going to call it an intuition here about that. I really see a huge potential from listening to Indigenous people and what they have to say, and somehow, and this is naive, but somehow letting go of the colonizing approach and picking up some of the ancient wisdom. I'm not saying, we need to go there either completely, but I feel like we need to marry that together with our modern science and technology in a thoughtful way. And I feel like that has like huge potential for paving a way into the future that is more sustainable and healthier. And what I see in some Indigenous traditions is that they recognize a female side and a male side. So bringing the female wisdom that, I believe men have that as well as women,
They
but
do.
bringing
Yes.
the female kind of wisdom into our decision making is a really strong positive change that I think we could make. And I'm an optimist. I believe that's where we will get to. It seems to be that we have to go through an awful lot of heartache to get
I
there.
I fear there is no other way. So therefore, the way of heartache is neither good nor bad. It is simply the necessary way.
It's the only way. Yeah.
It's the only way. And I think another thing we need in this temperament change is one, it cannot be just a temperament change among the so-called leaders, a word I generally dislike, because of what it implies. A sort of one set of humans controls another set of humans. No, I don't like that. But the temperament change has to be a complete temperament change eventually. And this connects to my concern that I usually phrase it as that human society today has a loss of meaning. You know, at the individual level, there is often a loss of meaning. And perhaps loss of meaning isn't accurate enough. Perhaps what I should be saying is that the meaning that we have now, many humans, most humans, is one that is a very transactional sense of meaning. It's a meaning around acquisition or spending, and you know, kind of the opiate of the masses kind of thing that's going on. And the elite way of thinking about this is to say, well, most humans just aren't smart enough, just aren't well read enough, aren't sensitive enough to acquire any other kind of meaning, or to accept any other, or be satisfied by other kinds of meanings. And I say, well, that's a self-defeating prophecy.
And it's a rationalization.
If that's true, then we will never get there. We will just swim in our suffering forever and ever and ever. And I, as an optimist, refuse to accept that. So this temperament cannot be about a change in leadership temperament. It's really about our appreciation of the real meaning of our lives.
It's a sacredness awareness.
Yes.
So I got really excited when I visited Mexico in January, February. They have some incredibly tough environmental problems to solve. But I stayed in the Zocalo in Mexico City, in the very center of it. And I love the indigenous people from Oaxaca were there doing ceremonies. I feel like they're pulling and marrying their indigenous cultures together with their, you know, Spanish Catholic, also, you know, history and culture. I love the way they marry it together right now. And I recognize that they have huge problems to solve, but I feel like they're going in the right direction, and that we could learn a lot from them for what we could do here in, you know, the United States, even
Right.
if people would look at it.
But the underlying piece of that, it seems to me, Melody, is they're allowing relationship to transform the people and culture. And instead of saying, so the thing I don't love about geoengineering is it's the same model as this leadership model that Carmen talks about hating, which is like, now we're going to control, here's nature, which is this feminine thing. Now we're going to control her because she needs to do this, and we can tell she needs to do this. And but the idea of, okay, so that's one way, and that has value, I guess. Yes, of course it must have value. I just get irritated with it. But another way is this being about centering the relationship and the power of relationship that supports both sides and elevates both sides to transform people and to transform culture. And so whether it's indigenous people being in relationship with non-indigenous people and that transforming the culture, or whether it's our feminine and masculine parts being in relationship and that transforming, or whether it's like in that work we did together on the intuitives working on climate issues and geoengineering, the best geoengineering possibility, which was still not great, was this one in which humans collaborated with were in relationship with biologics that could support the change in the climate. So, right, it wasn't direct manipulation. So
So
it
that
reminds me.
often suggests good technical solutions, natural systems, working with them. That's something that I get excited about regenerative agriculture and thinking about it, because the chemistry and physics too of our atmosphere today is maintained by the organisms in our soils. And the organisms in our soils are the population of different organisms in our soil changes depending on how we are, what's the right word? How we're manipulating the soil for agriculture. And so if we work with the biological systems, which is being used in places like Iowa to change on a small scale, but change the way that they're growing food in some places, that also has a positive impact on what gases the microorganisms in the soil are giving off, which then helps to mitigate climate change. So the systems are really related, and there are gentler ways that we can do what we need to do.
When you
That
say gentler, you mean gentler to the relationship, like awareness of the relationship. Is that what you mean by gentler?
Yeah, that's exactly. I don't know why gentler came out of my mouth, but it
That's a
just,
good word, but
it feels that way.
yeah.
To work with soil chemistry and biology to still be able to grow food, but not do it in the industrial sort of invasive way that we have been. And people are doing it. People are doing all kinds of really exciting things. I think it's just, I'm not sure we're hearing enough about that.
Yep.
And so I still remain hopeful. And I feel like it's sort of characterized as a more feminine way to do things, working with biological systems instead of manhandling them.
Well,
But
a small proof point, at the agency, we did hire, people with, biological, and at the CIA, which is my agency, with biological and chemical science degrees, and they were overwhelmingly women. That when we hired people as biologists or with chemical degrees, they were women. So we were always sort of scratching our head because, we were looking at the overall trends and making sure that we were, hiring the qualified, and diverse population. And it just, again, anecdotally seemed that women were attracted to, biology and chemistry.
biology,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably biology in particular.
Yeah, physics and engineering seem to be the last bastions of male dominance in science. So I actually built the instrument that I built for my PhD in an electrical engineering department. And there were only 2 women there. So when they had big meetings, it was me and my friend Pat Mead, Dr. Pat Mead, who is Black. And so we just stuck out like sore thumbs. I think in time, and I think this is happening now, women are sort of infiltrating in numbers that are becoming large enough so that they have support systems for each other,
Right.
which are happening. And,
Yep.
and I'm excited about that. One
That
thing,
is changing. That is changing the culture. Those support
yeah,
systems, because the way that women support each other with ideas and growing and amplification and such didn't used to be the case. We were more trying to fit into this other culture. but it feels like we're changing the overall I mean, am I being too optimistic with that? I feel
No,
like
I
that's
think
true.
that's
I don't
right.
think so. I think it's just very, very gradual. And again, I know that people want change, change is natural, but then they want to accelerate it unnaturally. And I think that is also problematic, to try to accelerate change, to not be patient.
I think being patient is one of the biggest challenges in our modern life.
Say more.
Yeah. The idea that you have to see results right away. Even in science, I can talk about science because it's a place I've been working for so many years. There is an emphasis on getting results when you write proposals. And so people can tend to write proposals to do something that they've already done.
Exactly.
So they're not trying new things. And trying new things really requires patience in the whole system. So instead of saying, okay, the agency says, whatever agency says, I funded this proposal and these are the results that we got after 3 years. Instead, it's taking a risk and saying, I funded this proposal and we might see something in 20 years.
Yes, right.
But
Yeah,
we
the
had to start.
standards, right, the standards by which that we use to judge proposals are flawed, because I can see right now the tick box where, if a proposal is highly rated, if there's a expected outcome that
Yeah.
can be
Exactly.
measured. Expected outcome can be measured. Tick. Okay. Yay. That's a good proposal, right?
But there's also impatience on the part of not only the proposal assessment, but on reporting. And so what if reporting for scientific proposals, when you actually get a scientific proposal, now that project, and now you're doing it and it's funded, what if reporting switched to either, so what are your results? Or if you don't have any results yet, what did you learn? Because you can learn so much from what has failed, but they're not asking you about that. And so that information is not getting back. So all this learning is completely lost.
Yes. Yeah, it's sad, and it takes a lot of courage, personal courage, to fight against that tendency to want to have something to report that people understand easily. But you can't do this. It's Einstein, right? Einstein's definition of insanity.
Yes,
You
exactly.
can't do the same thing over and over and expect different results. You have to try new stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I think people are, and I think people will. And I think it's a really interesting time to be in the world because of the swirl of stuff that's going on is pretty intense.
Yes.
I think you guys had an episode that I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but where you were talking about, yeah, President Biden did step down, which is
Yeah.
Julie and I talked about in Estes Park. And then Kamala Harris is now appears to have some momentum, and it would be pretty amazing if we had a Black female president of the United States.
Yes, it would.
It would. And it would be that kind of change that would be a shock to the system. And then if we stopped having that same kind of openness, that would be another shock to the system. I mean, it's very similar to, it's very similar to what you were talking about with the cloud stuff.
Termination shock.
Termination shock. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you make slow changes, they have more probability of being sustainable, is my thesis.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see.
Right. And so, but her just being a Black woman president, I don't think matters as much. I mean, to me, it's like that's important. And the reason why that's important is because of her experiences and how that has shaped her brain and who she will be and how she will lead. I think that's the part that is missing sometimes in conversations about what ends up being called identity politics, is the idea like, oh no, it's not just like, oh, there's a person of color, and so you know, you have someone representing people who have been represented for a long period of time. That's important. But even more important is people's, because of our, because of the way our culture works, people's body shape and body color, that affects their brains because it affects their lifelong experience of how they've been treated and what they've had to work through. And I just feel like we don't talk about that enough. So it gets confusing to people about why are you paying attention to these things that we're supposed to ignore or be blind to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound cynical here. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but you know, Kamala Harris, if she becomes president, may not be the, you know, transitional figure that we've just described. And, you know, I expect that she will disappoint us. And in fact, when I had people that I managed, I always used to say at the beginning to the team or the group, I would say, look, I will disappoint you at some points. I will disappoint you. I am not completely the person you know, that I'm even projecting to be, right?
Right.
You're seeing me on a good day, right? But but at believing, you know, in the kind of the long-term effects of all of this, it may be that Kamala Harris or someone like that, a transitional, transformational leader, inspires a group of other people who they are the ones who really are the ones who bring in the different temperament, and they only come forward because of the example of Kamala Harris. So I just don't I mean, I expect that she will be in her own way, you know, as manipulative, transactional, controlling as we're accustomed to, because that's the ladder that she had to climb.
Right.
But
But she also has,
she's still aware of other things.
that's
She's
right.
more aware of alternatives than someone clearly like Donald Trump.
She that's the ladder she had to climb, but
Mhm.
she also has changed, even in the time that she's been vice
Of course,
president.
she's changed. Yes.
Yeah, and so she's both aware of the ladder that you have to climb and also self-aware enough to see, oh, I could be in this state of sort of a slightly different state and use my femininity. I think, now maybe this is being idealistic, but I think she could say, I want to use my femininity to be somewhat humble and speak the truth about, frankly, everyone's disappointing. Everyone disappoints you. That's the reality. There's no generation of people who's going to come and be like, yeah, we're perfect. That's
Yes.
a disaster. That's a disaster.
Right.
So if she can grasp onto the reality of that, I think her choice of VP suggests that, because I'm from the Midwest, I would say that person's a Midwestern practical person who sees the reality of everyone's a mixed bag. I think, I don't know, I'm going to go with maybe less disappointed than you think.
Yes. Anyway, I just want to say that it's approaching 1:30, and I know that you said that we're at the edge of your time availability. We're at the edge. We're in the middle. That's great. That's where we should be.
Should we dance?
I can't.
Oh, because you've got people around you.
Yes, exactly. I am not in a pristine environment.
Exactly. We'll just dance this way.
Is there anything else you want to say though, Melody? Because
Um,
everything you've said has been inspiring.
oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Um, I really appreciate a chance to share ideas. They're a little bit different. I don't always have a platform for that. And I love talking to both of you and consider you both friends. So thank you for your friendship. And I feel gratitude and optimism.
Yes, yes, I'm
I
optimistic
really
too.
do.
Me
I
too.
think the future can be brighter. I think people can evolve and will evolve. And it's just slow. And we have to keep rowing our boat. That's the thing. Keep rowing the boat.
Yep.
And there you have
Just
it.
Keep Swimming is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
All
Just
right.
keep dancing. Just keep
Just keep
dancing.
dancing.
Sure.